The rain battered my window like it was trying to break in, each drop a tiny fist against the glass. I stood naked in my cramped Brooklyn apartment, fresh from a shower, my skin still steaming as I stared at the mirror, wondering who the hell I was anymore. Then I heard Ida creak, soft but sharp, like a secret being spilled in the dark. I froze, heart slamming against my ribs. My apartment was a fifth-floor walk-up, the kind where the walls were thin enough to hear your neighbor's regrets. No one should have been here. I grabbed a towel, wrapping it around my waist, and crept toward the living room, where the shadows seemed to shift just a little too much. The air felt wrong, heavy with someone else's presence. I wasn't alone. "Show yourself," I said, my voice sharper than I felt. Silence answered, but then a figure stepped into the dim glow of my desk lamp. He was tall, maybe 26, with sharp cheekbones and eyes that caught the light like a cat's. His leather jacket was slick with rain, and his hands were stuffed in his pockets. But one twitched toward something at his waist, a knife. Maybe, or worse. "Don't move," he said, low and steady, like he was used to giving orders. I should have been terrified, but something about him, maybe the way his gaze flickered, not cold but searching, made my fear tangle with something else. "You're in my place," I shot back, clutching the towel tighter. "What do you want?" He didn't answer right away. His eyes darted to the open window, the fire escape beyond it, then back to me. "I didn't expect you to be like this," he said, almost to himself. His voice had a crack in it, like he was caught off guard. I realized then he wasn't just a thief. He was running from something or someone. "My name's Eli, 24, a graphic designer scraping by in a city that chews up dreamers like me. I'd moved to Brooklyn 2 years ago, chasing a life I thought I could build open, honest, free. I'd come out at 19, left my small-town Ohio life behind, but freedom came with a cost. Loneliness clung to me like damp clothes, and this stranger in my apartment was the first person to look at me like I was more than a ghost in my own life. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said, stepping closer. His boots left wet prints on my floor. "I just needed a place to hide." "Hide from what?" I asked, my voice steadier now. He hesitated, and in that pause, I saw Ida flicker of fear in his eyes, the kind that runs deeper than a moment. "Cops. Someone worse." I pressed. He smirked, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You ask a lot of questions for a guy in a towel." I flushed but held my ground. "You break into my place. You answer my questions. Who are you?" "Call me Jace," he said, like it was a favor. "And you're?" "Eli." I didn't know why I told him. Maybe because he didn't feel like a stranger anymore. Not entirely. There was something about him rough, guarded, but human. Before he could say more, a sharp knock rattled the door. His whole body tensed, like a wire pulled tight. "Don't answer it," he whispered, his hand brushing my arm. His touch was electric, unintentional, but it lingered in my skin. "Why not?" I asked, but my voice was quieter now, caught in the gravity of his urgency. "They're looking for me," he said. "And if they find me here, you're in it too." I didn't know who they were, but the way his jaw clenched told me they weren't the kind of people you invite in for coffee. My pulse raced, not just from fear, but from the pull of this stranger who'd crashed into my life like a storm. I should have screamed, called the cops, done something rational. But I didn't. Instead, I stepped closer to him, the towel slipping slightly, and said, "Then you better start talking." Jace's story came in fragments, like a puzzle I had to piece together. He wasn't just a thief, was a runner. A guy who'd grown up in foster homes, always one step ahead of trouble. He'd fallen in with a crew in Queens, small-time hustlers who'd graduated to something darker. "I didn't sign up for this," he said, His voice low, eyes fixed on the floor. They want me to do things. Things I can't. Like what? I asked, sitting on the arm of my couch, still half naked, still clutching that damn towel. He shook his head. You don't want to know? Not yet. But I did. I wanted to know everything about him, why he ran, why he chose my window, why his eyes kept finding mine like he was searching for something he'd lost. The knocking came again, louder, more insistent. Jace grabbed my wrist, pulling me toward the bedroom. Stay quiet, he hissed. And for God's sake, put some clothes on. I yanked on a pair of jeans and a t-shirt, my hands shaking as I tried to process what was happening. Jace pressed himself against the wall, peering through the crack of the bedroom door. The knocking stopped, but the silence felt worse, like the calm before a blade falls. Who are they? I whispered, my back against the wall beside him. Our shoulders brushed, and I could feel the heat of him, the way his breath hitched. People you don't cross, he said. I took something from them. Something they'll kill for. I stared at him, my mind racing. What did you take? He met my eyes, and for the first time, I saw something raw, unguarded. Proof, he said. Proof they're not untouchable. I didn't know what that meant, but the weight of it settled in my chest. This wasn't just about a break-in. This was bigger, deeper, and I was already caught in it. The rain kept pounding outside, and I realized I didn't want him to leave, not yet. Not until I understood why fate had thrown us together in this moment. In my tiny apartment, with danger knocking at the door. We stayed pressed against the wall for what felt like forever. The silence outside my apartment door more oppressive than the rain. Jace's breath was shallow, his body coiled like a spring, ready to bolt. I could smell the rain on his jacket, mixed with something sharper, fear, maybe, or defiance. They're gone, I whispered, more to convince myself than him. But Jace shook his head, his eyes still locked on the door. They don't give up that easy, he said. We need to move. Move, I hissed. This is my home. I'm not running from some goons because you decided to play hide and seek in my apartment. He turned to me, his face closer than I expected, his eyes dark and intense. You think I wanted this? You think I chose to drag you into my mess? There was a crack in his voice, a raw edge that made my stomach twist. I didn't. But you're in it now, Eli. And if you don't trust me, we're both screwed. Trust him. I barely knew him. But something in his gaze, desperate, unguarded, made me want to. Against every shred of logic, I nodded. Fine. What's the plan? He exhaled, like he'd been holding his breath for years. We get out. Fire escape. Now. I grabbed a jacket, my phone, and my keys, my hands moving on autopilot. Jace was already at the window, sliding it open with practiced ease. The rain had slowed to a drizzle, but the metal rungs of the fire escape glistened, slick and treacherous. He climbed out first, his movements quick but careful, and I followed, my heart pounding so loud I swore it echoed off the brick walls. The city sprawled below us, a maze of lights and noise, indifferent to the chaos unfolding in my life. Jace moved like he'd done this 100 times, his boots barely making a sound on the rungs. I was clumsier, my sneakers slipping once, sending my stomach lurching. He grabbed my arm, steadying me. Careful, he muttered, his grip firm but not rough. Thanks, I said, my voice barely audible over the hum of the city. His hand lingered a moment longer than it needed to, and I felt that same electric jolt from earlier. I shook it off. This wasn't the time to notice how his touch made my skin hum. We reached the alley below, the air thick with the smell of wet asphalt and garbage. Jace scanned the street, his body tense, like he expected trouble to jump out of every shadow. "Where are we going?" I asked, pulling my jacket tighter against the chill. "Somewhere safe," he said, leading me toward a side street. "I know a place." The place turned out to be a dive bar in Greenpoint, the kind of spot where the neon sign flickered and the jukebox played songs nobody remembered. Inside, it was all cracked vinyl booths and the faint smell of stale beer. Jace nodded at the bartender, a grizzled guy with a scar across his eyebrow, and led me to a booth in the back. "Sit," he said, sliding in across from me. "We're off the radar here. For now." I sat, my mind still reeling. "Okay, Jace. No more half answers. What's going on? What did you steal? And why are they after you?" He leaned back, running a hand through his damp hair. "You're not going to let this go, are you?" "Not a chance." He sighed, glancing around like he was checking for eavesdroppers. "I used to run with a crew. Small stuff at first, petty theft. Scams. Then they got into something bigger. Drugs. Money laundering. The kind of shit that gets you locked up for life. Or worse." He paused, his fingers tapping the table. "I didn't want in. But you don't just walk away from people like that." "So you stole something too. What?" "Blackmail them?" I asked, trying to piece it together. "Not blackmail. Leverage." He pulled a small USB drive from his pocket, holding it like it was a grenade. "This has names, dates, accounts. Enough to bring them down." I was going to hand it over to the right people, but they caught wind of it. I stared at the drive, a tiny thing that could ruin lives or save them. The right people? Like who? He hesitated, his eyes searching mine. "There's a cop. A detective I've been feeding info to. She's clean, or as clean as they come. But I need to get this to her without getting us both killed." "Us?" I echoed, my voice sharper than I meant. "Jace, I'm not part of your crusade." "You are now," he said, his voice low but firm. "They saw me come in through your window. They'll think you're involved, whether you like it or not." My stomach dropped. I wanted to argue, to tell him he was wrong, but the weight of his words settled like a stone. I was in this, whether I'd asked for it or not. The bartender slid 2 beers onto our table, and Jace pushed one toward me. "Drink," he said. "You look like you need it." I took a sip, the cold bitterness grounding me. "Why me?" I asked, my voice quieter now. "Why my apartment?" He looked at me, really looked, like he was seeing me for the first time. "I didn't plan it. I was running. Saw your window open. Thought it was empty. Then I saw you. And," he trailed off, his jaw tightening. "I don't know. You didn't scream or call the cops. You just stood there, asking questions. Most people would have lost it." I laughed, a shaky sound. "Yeah, well, I'm not most people." "I'm starting to get that," he said, and there was something in his voice, something warm, almost soft, that made my chest tighten. We sat there, the bar's low hum wrapping around us, and I realized I wasn't just scared anymore. I was curious. About him, about this mess, about the way his eyes kept finding mine like we were already tied together by something bigger than chance. The bar's dim light made Jace's face look softer, but his eyes were still sharp, scanning the room every few seconds. I sipped my beer, trying to process the fact that my life had gone from mundane to a crime drama in the span of an hour. The USB drive sat between us on the table, a small, black thing that felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. "So what now?" I asked, leaning forward. "You just hide out forever. Hope they forget about you." Jace's lips twitched, not quite a smile. You think I haven't tried that? Running's only good until they catch up. And they always do. He took a long pull from his beer, his throat working as he swallowed. I need to get this drive to the detective. She's got connections. People who can use it to take them down. And what's stopping you? I asked, my voice edged with frustration. Why not just hand it over and be done with it? He leaned closer, his voice dropping. Because they've got eyes everywhere. Cops, informants, even some of the bartenders in places like this. I can't just walk into a precinct. And I can't trust a drop until I know it's safe. I rubbed my temples, the weight of it all pressing down. So why drag me along? You could have left me back there. Let me deal with the fallout. He looked at me, his expression unreadable. I don't know. Maybe I didn't want to leave you to deal with them alone. Maybe I felt something. He stopped, like he'd said too much, and looked away, his jaw tight. My heart skipped, but I pushed it down. This wasn't the time to unpack whatever that meant. Okay, I said, keeping my voice steady. So we get the drive to your detective. Then what? Then I disappear, he said, his voice flat. New city, new name. I'm good at starting over. The thought of him vanishing hit me harder than it should have. I barely knew him, but the idea of him walking out of my life as fast as he'd walked and felt wrong. And what about me? I asked, quieter now. What happens when they come looking? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached across the table, his fingers brushing mine. It wasn't intentional, just a graze, but it sent a jolt through me. I won't let them hurt you, he said, his voice low, almost a promise. I swear. I pulled my hand back, not because I didn't want his touch, but because I did too much. You can't promise that, I said. You don't even know me. I know enough, he said, his eyes locking onto mine. You're not the kind of guy who runs from a fight, even if you're scared. I saw it back there, the way you held your ground. I laughed, a bitter sound. Yeah, well, I'm not exactly a hero. I'm just a guy trying to pay rent. You're more than that, he said, and the way he said it, like it was a fact, made my chest ache. Before I could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his face hardening. Shit, he muttered, shoving it back in his pocket. What? I asked, my stomach twisting. They're closer than I thought, he said. We need to move. Now. We slipped out the back of the bar, the alley behind it dark and narrow, the kind of place where bad things happen. Jace moved fast, his hand brushing my elbow to keep me close. The city felt different now, like every shadow was watching us. We ducked into a subway station, the fluorescent lights harsh after the bar's dim glow. Jace paid for my fare, his movements quick and practiced, like he'd done this 100 times. On the train, we sat close, our knees brushing. The car was half empty, the late-night crowd a mix of tired workers and drunk college kids. Jace kept his head down, his cap pulled low, but I could feel the tension radiating off him. Tell me about you, I said, needing to fill the silence, to anchor myself. Before all this, who were you? He glanced at me, surprised, like no one had asked him that in a long time. Not much to tell, he said. Grew up in foster care. Bounced around a lot. Learned how to survive early. He paused, his fingers tracing the edge of his jacket. I wanted to be an artist once. Drew a lot as a kid. Thought it'd be my way out. An artist? I said, trying to picture it. What kind? Street stuff. Graffiti. Mostly. I was good, too. Had a few pieces in galleries before. He trailed off, his expression darkening. before I got mixed up with the wrong people. I wanted to ask more, but the train screeched to a stop, and Jace was on his feet. "This is us," he said, pulling me toward the door. We emerged in Manhattan, the streets alive with the hum of late-night cabs and distant sirens. Jace led me to a small, nondescript building tucked between a deli and a laundromat. He knocked on the door in a pattern too quick. One slow and it opened to reveal a woman in her 40s, sharp-eyed and no-nonsense, with a badge clipped to her belt. "Detective Harper," Jace said, nodding. "This is Eli. He's with me." She raised an eyebrow, looking me over like I was a puzzle she didn't have time for. "You trust him?" she asked Jace. Her voice clipped. "I do," he said, and the certainty in his voice made my heart stutter. She sighed, stepping aside. "Get in. We don't have much time." Inside, the apartment was sparse. Just a table, a laptop, and a few chairs. Harper sat, gesturing for us to do the same. "You got it?" she asked Jace. He slid the USB drive across the table. "Everything's on there. Names, accounts, drop points. Enough to bury them." She plugged it into her laptop, her fingers flying over the keys. "This better be worth it, kid. You've got a lot of people pissed off." "It's worth it," Jace said, his voice steady. "But you need to move fast. They're already on us." I sat there, feeling like I was in over my head. But Jace's hand brushed mine under the table, a quiet reassurance. For the first time, I felt like I wasn't just along for the ride. I was part of this, part of him, and that thought was as terrifying as it was exhilarating. Detective Harper's apartment was a fortress of controlled chaos, papers strewn across the table, a coffee mug stained with days-old grounds, and a whiteboard covered in names and arrows that looked like a conspiracy theorist's fever dream. She didn't look up from her laptop as she spoke. "This is good, Jace. Really good. But it's not enough to just hand it over. We need a plan to get this to the feds without it getting buried." I glanced at Jace, who was leaning forward, his hands clasped tight. "What's that mean?" I asked, my voice cutting through the hum of the laptop. Harper's eyes flicked to me, sharp and assessing. "It means the people Jace pissed off have friends in high places. Cops, politicians, you name it. If we don't do this right, this drive disappears, and so do we." A chill ran through me. I'd known this was serious, but hearing it laid out like that made it real. Too real. "So what do we do?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "We set a trap," Harper said, leaning back in her chair. "Use the drive as bait. Draw them out. Catch them in the act. It's risky, but it's the only way to make sure this sticks." Jace nodded, but his jaw was tight. "And what about Eli? He's not part of this." Harper's gaze softened, just a fraction. "He is now. They've seen him with you. If we don't end this, they'll come for him too." I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. Jace's hand found mine again, under the table, his grip tight. "I'm sorry," he whispered, so low only I could hear. "I didn't mean for this." I squeezed his hand back, my heart pounding. "I know," I said, "but I'm here now. Let's finish it." Harper laid out the plan, a stage drop, with the drive as the lure. She'd coordinate with a few trusted feds, set up surveillance, and wait for the crew to make their move. Jace and I would be the bait, visible enough to draw them out, but not so exposed we'd get killed. At least, that was the idea. We left Harper's place just before dawn, the city still half asleep. Jace was quiet as we walked, his hands stuffed in his pockets, his shoulders hunched against the cold. I wanted to say something, to break the tension, but the weight of what we were about to do kept me silent. "You don't have to do this," he said finally, stopping under a flickering streetlight. "You can walk away. I'll figure out a way to keep them off you." I shook my head. "And what? Let you do this alone? You said it yourself, they don't give up easy. I'm not leaving you to face that." He looked at me, his eyes searching, like he was trying to figure out why I cared. Hell, I was trying to figure that out myself. But there was something about him, his defiance, his vulnerability, the way he made me feel seen that kept me tethered to him. "You're crazy," he said, but there was a warmth in his voice, a hint of a smile. "You know that, right?" says the guy who climbed through my window. I shot back, and for the first time, he laughed a real, unguarded laugh that lit up his face. We kept moving, heading to a cheap motel Harper had set up as our safe house. The room was small, with a lumpy bed and a TV that probably hadn't worked since the 90s. Jace dropped his bag by the door and collapsed onto the bed, staring at the ceiling. I sat on the edge, my hands restless in my lap. "Tell me something," I said, needing to fill the silence. "Something real. Not about this mess. About you." He turned his head, his eyes meeting mine. "Like what?" "Anything. What's your favorite place? What do you dream about when you're not running?" He was quiet for a moment, like he was digging through memories he hadn't touched in years. "There's this spot in upstate New York," he said finally. "A lake, surrounded by trees. I went there once, when I was a kid, with a foster family that wasn't terrible. I used to think I'd go back someday. Build a cabin. Just live. No running. No hiding." I could see it, the way his face softened as he talked, like he was holding on to that dream with everything he had. "Sounds nice," I said. "Quiet." "Yeah," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "What about you? What's your dream?" I hesitated, not used to talking about myself like this. "I want to make something that matters. Art. Designs. Something that makes people feel seen. Like they're not alone." He looked at me, his gaze steady. "You're good at that," he said. "Making people feel seen." My cheeks warmed, and I looked away, suddenly aware of how close we were. The room felt smaller, the air charged with something I couldn't name. His hand brushed mine, deliberate this time, and I didn't pull away. His fingers laced through mine, slow and careful, like he was testing the waters. "Eli," he said, his voice rough, "I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. But right now, I'm glad you're here." I met his eyes, my heart racing. "Me too," I said, and for the first time, I let myself feel a pull between us, the spark that had been there since he stepped into my apartment. We didn't kiss. Not then. But we stayed like that, hands intertwined, the weight of the world outside fading for just a moment. Tomorrow, we'd face the danger, the trap, the uncertainty. But tonight, it was just us, two people caught in a storm, holding on to each other like we could keep it at bay. The motel room's fluorescent light buzzed faintly, casting a sickly glow over us as we sat on the bed, hands still linked. Jace's thumb traced slow circles on my skin, each movement sending a quiet thrill through me. Outside, the city hummed, oblivious to the storm brewing in our lives. "We should sleep," Jace said, but he didn't move, his eyes locked on mine. "Big day tomorrow." "Yeah," I agreed, but neither of us let go. The air between us was heavy, not with fear now, but with something deeper, something that scared me in a different way. I'd spent years building walls around my heart, keeping people at arm's length. But Jace, with his guarded eyes and reckless courage, was tearing them down without even trying. He leaned closer, his breath warm against my cheek. Eli, he whispered, and my name sounded like a question. A plea. I turned, our faces inches apart, and for a moment, I thought he'd close the gap. But he pulled back, his jaw tight, like he was fighting himself. What? I asked, my voice barely steady. I don't want to mess this up, he said, his eyes flickering with something raw. You're not like anyone I've met. And I'm not good for you. Not with my life. I swallowed, my chest tight. You don't get to decide that, I said. I'm here, Jace. I chose this. He looked at me, searching, and then he kissed me. It was soft at first, tentative, like he was afraid I'd pull away. But I didn't. I kissed him back, my hands finding his face, pulling him closer. The world fell away, the danger, the drive, the trap we were walking into. There was only him, the heat of his mouth, the way his hands gripped my shirt like he was afraid I'd disappear. When we broke apart, we were both breathing hard, our foreheads pressed together. I didn't plan this, he said, his voice rough. I didn't plan you. Good, I said, a shaky laugh escaping me. Because I didn't plan you either. We fell asleep like that, tangled together on the narrow bed, the weight of tomorrow looming but not enough to pull us apart. When morning came, the world felt sharper, more dangerous. Harper's plan was simple but brutal. We'd meet her contact at a warehouse in Red Hook, make it look like Jace was handing off the drive, and let the feds catch the crew in the act. Simple, except for the part where we were the bait. We took a cab to the warehouse, the city blurring past us in a haze of gray and glass. Jace was quiet, his hand resting on my knee, a silent anchor. I wanted to say something, to tell him how much last night meant, but the words felt too big, too fragile. The warehouse was a hulking, rusted thing, its windows boarded up, the air thick with the smell of oil and decay. Harper was already there, her face grim as she handed us earpieces. Stay sharp, she said. They'll be watching. You stick to the script, and we'll handle the rest. Jace nodded, slipping the earpiece in. I did the same, my hand shaking. You okay? He asked, his voice low. No, I admitted. But I'm not backing out. He smiled, a small, fierce thing. That's my guy? The words hit me harder than they should have, warming me even as fear clawed at my chest. We stepped into the warehouse, the space vast and empty, our footsteps echoing. The plan was to wait for Harper's signal, make it look like Jace was meeting someone to hand off the drive. But as the minutes ticked by, the silence grew heavier, the shadows darker. Then it happened, a low whistle, sharp and deliberate, from the far end of the warehouse. Jace tensed, his hand brushing mine. They're here, he whispered. 3 figures emerged from the shadows, their faces hard, their movements deliberate. The leader was a man in his 30s, broad-shouldered, with a scar running down his cheek. Jace, he said, his voice like gravel. You've been busy. Jace stepped forward, his posture defiant. I'm done running. Marco, you want the drive. Come get it. Marco's eyes flicked to me, and I felt like a mouse under a hawk's gaze. Who's the kid? He asked. Doesn't matter, Jace said, his voice steady. This is between you and me. Marco smirked, pulling a gun from his jacket. My heart stopped, but Jace didn't flinch. You think you can play hero? Marco said. You're nothing. Just a rat who got lucky. I wanted to scream, to run, but Jace's hand found mine, squeezing hard. Stay calm, he whispered, so low I barely heard it. Then, louder, to Marco, you want the drive. It's yours. But you let him go. Marco laughed. A cold, hollow sound. You don't make the rules, Jace. The air crackled with tension, and I realized this wasn't going according to plan. Harper's voice should have come through the earpiece by now, but it was silent. Too silent. I glanced at Jace, his face pale but resolute, and I knew we were on our own. Then, a sound of faint click from above. I looked up, catching a glint of metal in the rafters. A sniper. A trap. My stomach dropped, but Jace's grip on my hand tightened, grounding me. Whatever happened next, we were in it together. The warehouse felt like a cage, the air thick with the threat of violence. Marco's gun gleamed under the dim light, his finger resting too close to the trigger. Jace stood firm, his body angled slightly in front of me, like he could shield me from whatever came next. My pulse hammered in my ears, drowning out the silence from Harper's earpiece. You're out of moves, Jace, Marco said, stepping closer. His men flanked him, their eyes cold, calculating. Hand over the drive, and maybe I let your boyfriend walk. I stiffened, the word hitting like a spark. Jace didn't react, but his grip on my hand tightened. A silent promise. Let him go first, Jace said, his voice steady. Then we talk. Marco laughed. A sharp, ugly sound. You don't get it, do you? You're not walking out of here. Either of you. My stomach twisted, but before I could speak, a low hum crackled through my earpiece. Harper's voice, faint but urgent, hold tight. We're in position. Stall him. I glanced at Jace, hoping he'd heard it too. His eyes flicked to mine, a subtle nod confirming he had. We just needed time. I swallowed, stepping forward, my voice shaking but loud. Why do you need the drive so bad? Huh? What's on it that's worth all this? Marco's eyes narrowed, his gun shifting toward me. Jace tensed, but I kept going, my fear buried under a surge of adrenaline. You're scared, aren't you? I said. Scared of what's on there. Scared it'll ruin you. Shut up, Marco snapped, but I saw a flicker of unease in his eyes. I was getting to him. Eli, Jace hissed, his voice low. Don't. But I couldn't stop. If we were going to get out of this, we had to keep Marco talking, keep him distracted. You're not as untouchable as you think, I said, my voice steadier now. That drive's got your name on it, doesn't it? All your dirty secrets. Marco's face darkened, and he took a step toward me, the gun steady in his hand. You've got a big mouth for someone who's about to die. Then do it, I said, my heart pounding so hard I thought it'd burst. But you know what happens if you pull that trigger. The feds are watching. You're done. It was a bluff, but it landed. Marco hesitated, his eyes darting to the shadows, like he was suddenly aware of how exposed he was. Jace seized the moment, stepping forward. He's right, he said. You kill us. You're just digging your own grave. The drive's already out there. Copies. You can't stop it. Marco's jaw clenched, his gun wavering. Then, chaos erupted. A flash of light from the rafters, a shout, and the warehouse doors burst open. Feds in tactical gear stormed in, their voices sharp, weapons raised. Drop it. Now. Marco's men scattered, but he stood frozen, the gun still in his hand. Jace shoved me behind a crate, his body shielding mine as shots rang out. The noise was deafening, a cacophony of yells and gunfire. I clung to Jace, my breath ragged, my mind racing with the fear that this was a two wouldn't make it. But then it was over. The gunfire stopped, replaced by the sound of cuffs clicking and Harper's voice barking orders. I peeked out from behind the crate, my hand shaking. Marco was on his knees, his gun on the ground, his face a mask of rage and defeat. The feds had him. Jace pulled me to my feet, his hands gripping my shoulders. "You okay?" he asked, his voice rough with worry. I nodded, too shaken to speak. He pulled me into a hug, his arms tight around me, and for a moment, I let myself breathe, let myself feel the solid warmth of him. We'd made it. Somehow, we'd made it. Harper approached, her face grim but satisfied. "Good work," she said, clapping Jace on the shoulder. "The drive's secure. We've got enough to take down half the crew. Maybe more." "What about him?" I asked, nodding toward Marco, who was being led away in cuffs. "He's done," Harper said. "And with any luck, so's his whole operation." Jace exhaled, his shoulders sagging with relief. But his eyes were still guarded, like he was waiting for the next shoe to drop. "What now?" he asked Harper. "Now you lay low," she said. "Both of you. They've got long arms, and they don't forget. I'll get you new IDs, a place to stay until this blows over." "New IDs," I said, my voice sharp. "I have a life, Harper. A job, an apartment." "Not anymore," she said, not unkindly. "They know your face. Eli. You're a target now." The reality of it hit me like a punch. My life, me small, messy, hard-won life was gone. I looked at Jace, expecting him to say something, to fight for me. But he just looked back, his eyes full of guilt and something else, something that looked like hope. "I'm sorry," he said again, his voice barely above a whisper. "But I'll keep you safe. I promise." I wanted to be angry, to scream at him for dragging me into this. But I couldn't. Not when he looked at me like that, like I was the only thing keeping him grounded. "Okay," I said finally. "But you owe me a new life." He smiled. "A small, crooked thing. Deal." Harper set us up in a safe house upstate, a small cabin by a lake that felt like it was pulled from Jace's childhood dreams. It was quiet, the kind of quiet that made you hear your own thoughts too clearly. We spent the first night on the porch, the stars bright above us, the air cool and crisp. "I didn't want this for you," Jace said, his voice soft as he stared out at the water. "I didn't want to take your life away." I reached for his hand, lacing our fingers together. "You didn't," I said. "You gave me something new, something real." He looked at me, his eyes shining in the moonlight. And this time, when he kissed me, it wasn't tentative. It was fierce, hungry, like he was pouring everything he had into it. I kissed him back, my hands in his hair, my heart racing with the knowledge that this moment, this man was worth everything we'd been through. The cabin was small but warm, its wooden walls creaking softly as the wind moved through the trees outside. Jace and I settled into a strange rhythm over the next few days, learning each other in the quiet moments between the fear. We cooked meals with whatever Harper had stocked in the pantry, sat by the lake, and talked about everything and nothing, his love for sketching, my obsession with old jazz records, the lives we'd left behind. But the fear was always there, lurking like a shadow. Every creak of the floorboards, every snap of a twig outside, made us tense, our eyes meeting in silent question. Is this it? Are they here? Harper called daily, updating us on the case. Marco and his crew were in custody, but their network was sprawling, and some of their allies were still out there, hunting for us. "We're close," Harper said on the third day, her voice crackling through the burner phone. "The feds are dismantling their operation, but you need to stay put. No slip-ups." Jace hung up, his face tight. "She's right," he said, pacing the small living room. "We can't get comfortable. Not yet. I watched him, my heart aching at the way he carried the weight of this. Jace, I said, stepping closer. We're okay. We're here. Together. He stopped, his eyes meeting mine. You shouldn't have to live like this, he said. Hiding. Running. You deserve better. So do you, I said, reaching for his hand. But we're in this together now. And I'm not going anywhere. He pulled me close, his arms wrapping around me. And for a moment, the world felt right. But that night, as we lay in bed, his body curled against mine. I felt the tension in him, the way he never fully relaxed. He was still running, even here. The next morning, I woke to find him sketching at the kitchen table, his pencil moving over a worn notebook. It was Mimi's face, my eyes, captured in sharp, careful lines. You're good, I said, leaning over his shoulder. He flushed, closing the notebook. It's nothing. Just keeps me sane. Let me see, I said, reaching for it. He hesitated but handed it over. The pages were filled with sketches, city streets, faces, moments. And then, over and over, me. In the bar, on the fire escape, in the warehouse. Me, through his eyes. You see me, I said, my voice thick. Really see me. He looked away, his cheeks red. You're hard to miss, he muttered. I kissed him then, slow and deep, pouring everything I felt into it. He kissed me back, his hands framing my face. And for the first time, I felt like we could build something real, something lasting, even in the middle of this chaos. But the peace didn't last. That afternoon, Harper's call came with a warning. They found the safe house, she said, her voice tight. You need to move. Now. Jace was already packing, his movements swift and practiced. I grabbed what I could, my hands shaking. Where do we go? I asked, fear clawing at me again. There's another spot, he said. Harper's got it covered. But we need to be fast. We left the cabin behind, the lake fading into the distance as we drove a beat-up car Harper had left for us. The new safe house was deeper in the woods, a small trailer hidden among the trees. It felt more like a cage than a home, but it was safe for now. That night, as we sat on the trailer's narrow steps, Jace told me more about his past. The foster homes, the streets, the way he'd learned to survive by keeping everyone at a distance. I never thought I'd have this, he said, his hand finding mine. Someone like you. You've got me, I said, my voice steady despite the fear. And I'm not letting go. He smiled, but it was tinged with sadness. You might have to, Eli. If this goes wrong, it won't, I said, cutting him off. We're getting through this. Together. He nodded, but I could see the doubt in his eyes. And as we sat there, the forest quiet around us, I realized how much I'd changed since that night in my apartment. I wasn't just Eli, the lonely graphic designer anymore. I was someone who fought, who loved, who risked everything for the man beside me. The next day, Harper's call brought news. We've got a lead on the last of their crew, she said. But they're desperate. They know they're losing. You need to be ready for anything. Jace and I spent the day preparing, checking the trailer's locks, mapping escape routes. But as night fell, the air grew heavy, the silence oppressive. And then we heard Ida low hum, like a car engine, approaching through the trees. The hum of the engine grew louder, a low growl that cut through the forest stillness. Jace grabbed my arm, pulling me inside the trailer. Stay low, he whispered, his voice tight with urgency. He grabbed a knife from the kitchen counter, his movements swift and practiced. while I crouched behind the couch, my heart pounding. The headlights swept across the trailer's windows, casting jagged shadows on the walls. Jace peered through a crack in the blinds, his body tense. 2 of them, he muttered. Maybe more. I swallowed, my mouth dry. What do we do? He glanced at me, his eyes fierce. We fight. Or we run. Your call. I wanted to run, to disappear into the woods and never look back. But I thought of Jace, of the way he'd fought for me, for us, from the moment he climbed through my window. We fight, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. He nodded, a flicker of pride in his eyes. Good. Stay close. The car stopped, the engine cutting off. Silence followed, heavy and suffocating. Then footsteps slow, deliberate, crunching on the gravel outside. Jace handed me a heavy flashlight, the closest thing to a weapon we had besides his knife. If it comes to it, he said, aim for the head. I nodded, gripping the flashlight like a lifeline. The door rattled, someone testing the lock. Jace moved to the side, his knife ready, while I stayed low, my breath shallow. The lock clicked, and the door swung open, revealing a man I didn't recognize tall, wiry, with a face like a blade. He held a gun, his eyes scanning the room. Jace, he called, his voice low and mocking. Come out, kid. Let's make this easy. Jace didn't move, but his eyes met mine, a silent signal. I nodded, my heart racing. Then, chaos. Jace lunged, his knife flashing as he tackled the man. They hit the floor, a tangle of limbs and curses. I didn't think I swung the flashlight, catching the man's shoulder. He grunted, his gun skittering across the floor. Eli, grab it. Jace shouted, pinning the man down. I scrambled for the gun, my hands shaking as I picked it up. It felt heavy, foreign, but I held it steady, pointing it at the man as Jace tied his hands with a belt. Where's the other one? I asked, my voice trembling. Jace didn't get to answer. A second figure burst through the door, a woman with cold eyes and a knife of her own. She went for Jace, but I was faster. I swung the flashlight again, catching her arm. She hissed, dropping the knife, and Jace was on her in an instant, pinning her beside her partner. We stood there, panting, the trailer a wreck of overturned furniture and shattered glass. The 2 intruders glared up at us, their faces twisted with rage. You're dead, the man spat. Both of you. Not today, Jace said, his voice hard. He looked at me, his eyes softening. You okay? I nodded, still clutching the gun. Yeah. You. He smiled, a small, tired thing. Thanks to you. We tied them up, using every belt and cord we could find, and called Harper. She arrived with a team within the hour, her face grim but relieved. Last of them, she said, looking at the 2 intruders. You did good, kids. The feds took them away, and Harper sat us down, her expression serious. It's over, she said. The network's down. The drive did its job. You're free. Free. The word felt strange, like it didn't fit yet. Jace and I sat on the trailer steps, the forest quiet around us, the stars bright above. What now? I asked, my voice soft. He took my hand, his fingers warm against mine. We start over, he said. Together. I looked at him, at the man who'd crashed into my life and changed everything. I thought of my old apartment, my old dreams, the life I'd left behind. And I realized I didn't miss it, not really. Because here, with Jace, I'd found something better. Something real. We moved to a small town in Oregon, far from the city's noise and danger. Jace started sketching again, his art filling our little house with color and life. I took up freelance design, my work quieter but more meaningful, each piece a reflection of the love we'd built. Years later, we'd sit on our porch, watching the sunset, our hands still finding each other like they did that first night. The world had tested us, broken us, rebuilt us. And through it all, we'd learned that love real, messy, hard-won love was stronger than any storm. We weren't just survivors. We were home.